Alright folks, how you doing? So unfortunately, debunking Ged Skeptic's bullshit is turning into a full-time fucking job. He was whining in his video about how a lot of Scottish land, most Scottish land, 50% I think he said, was only owned by a very few individuals. To which I replied, well, we have the right to roam. I mean, he's talking about how much freedom do we have when, so much land is owned by so few people, and I came back and said, actually, we have a lot of freedom. And here's the proof: freedom to roam in Scotland, everything you need to know. This is all accessible online. Seeing here, Backpacking Scotland founder Apidura Ambassador Marcus Stitz guides us through Scotland's Freedom to Roam Act and explains what it means for bike packers and adventure cyclists. This is only one website, there's others that you can look at as well. So it's saying here the Land Reform Act 2003 gives everyone right of access over land and inland water throughout Scotland, subject to specific exclusions set out in the Act, and as long as they behave responsibly. These rights are sometimes referred to as freedom to roam, Scottish Rights of Way and Access Society. It says here, when Scottish legislation on public freedom to roam changed in 2003, it marked the moment that the hills, valleys, and moors and waters of Scotland became open to anyone who wanted to explore them. Made for purpose by both recreation and education, as well as to give the public rights to make overland journeys, the Act was at once a nod to ancient traditions and an outlook to the future. As a result, riders in search of adventure now have more access to nature in Scotland than they do anywhere else in the UK, as well as the scenery to accompany it. Here, Backpacking Scotland founder Apidura Ambassador Marcus Stitz guides us through Scotland's Freedom to Act, blah blah blah. I think we've covered that already. What is it? It says most land in Scotland is owned by very few people, so the Scottish access rights basically give you the right to access that land in Scotland for recreational and educational purposes, be it cycling, running, walking, or pitching a tent. There are only a few exclusions, like the curtilage of buildings and farmyards, quarries, railway property, and airfields. Well, I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't wander into those sorts of places anyway, but There are three key principles that are very important to mention. You have to respect the interests of other people, care for the environment, and take responsibility for your own actions. It says, how is it covered? The history of access rights in Scotland goes as far back as the 1890s. There were a few legislative efforts that failed, mainly due to the fact that such legislation would not have passed landowning interests in the House of Lords in Westminster. In Scotland, the Access Forum was established in 1994 to debate and resolve access issues at a national level. It was the work of that forum and the creation of the Scottish Parliament in 1999 that helped to lay the foundations. On 23rd of January 2003, Scottish Parliament passed legislation that fundamentally changed the balance between public and private interests over much of the land and water of Scotland, and this came into force in February 2005, creating the modern framework of Scottish access rights. Why was it created? Simple, because the people wanted better access to the land for recreational purposes, and their ambition had been given hope by the framework set up in the 90s to provide a means to debate and lobby for it. So there you go. And it goes on from there. But yeah, how much freedom do we have? Rather a lot. What were the exceptions? Where are you not allowed to go? You're not allowed to go on people's private property, like farmyards, for example. Don't go into quarries. I mean, why the fuck would you, unless you're completely nuts? Railway property, obvious. Airfields. I don't think a lot of people are wandering on the airfields, but there you go. So, yeah. We have rather a lot of freedom, as it turns out. All you had to do was go and look.